Hannah Hamilton's Horrid Hullabaloo by Mary Anna Huesler. This series is dedicated to all the wonderful Hewitt girls I was privileged to teach, with a special thanks to Savannah Rosen for her invaluable help. Chapter 13, Mrs. Merriweather. This can't be happening, Hannah thought, as suddenly the world grew dimmer and dimmer until everything was pitch black. I won't let her do this to me. So Hannah closed her eyes and concentrated really hard, but it didn't stop her from swirling in the air as she continued her breakneck journey, hearing something which resembled an earthquake. But maybe she wasn't even on Earth anymore. She couldn't think, at least not her own thoughts, because out of nowhere a picture burst into her mind. A small yellow car speeding down a highway headed straight for a cliff. Marla's visions. Marla's thoughts. Hannah was going to crash, and when she crashed, then she would die for a second and final time. And just when she thought that all was lost, she tumbled to the center of the altar, flanked by the old priest and Andrew. I was able to save you. The priest had a raspy, shaky voice. But you were foolish to come here. I tried to tell her that, Andrew mumbled. There has to be a way to fight Marla. Hannah had meant to sound strong and certain, but her own voice trembled as she realized how close she had come to obliteration. No one can help you defeat Marla, the priest argued. You have to do that by yourself. I've seen her take more powerful souls than yours. You were lucky today, but your luck will run out. Let's get out of here, Andrew said. And in a split second they were gone from St. Hedwig's and back at Anna's academy. Hannah could tell from the look in Andrew's eyes that it was payback time. I helped that old priest, Andrew said. He didn't even know what was happening. Now you have to do me a favor. You have to help me find that pink diamond. Before Hannah was able to ask how on earth she could be helpful, Andrew continued, showing more energy than she had seen from him before. I know who took it, he continued. I just don't know where it's hidden, although I'm betting it's somewhere in the library. Hannah could not restrain her curiosity. Who's the thief? Mrs. Merriweather. Who? The art teacher. Hannah must have had a baffled look on her face because Andrew continued with a further explanation. She broke her hip. You weren't here that night. Probably still alive. Hannah could not resist the interruption. I saw Mrs. Merriweather pick it up off the floor. Then she was walking around, almost searching for some place to ditch it. Summer's mother realized right away the stone was missing from its setting. She began screaming like a banshee. There was a lot of confusion, and then Mrs. Merriweather fell. I doubt that she took the diamond to the hospital, so it has to be here, somewhere in this room. Mrs. Danverglass thinks so, too. Andrew threw Hannah a bewildered look. I read her thoughts, Hannah admitted proudly. I'd like you to read Mrs. Merriweather's thoughts. I know where she is. She's in a nursing home on Morning Glory Lane, in bed 2203. Why don't you go yourself? Hannah asked doubtfully. Let me put it this way. I don't like nursing homes, and I have my reasons. Hannah didn't like nursing homes either, but she was beginning to understand that the ghost world worked very much like the world of the living. It was best to collect as many favors as possible. What do I get out of this? She came right to the point. My protection for eternity. Hannah was hoping for the day when she didn't need it. Hannah didn't know how much Andrew's protection was worth, but she agreed to go anyway. The entire thing was rather iffy. For one thing, maybe Mrs. Merriweather wouldn't even be thinking about the stolen diamond. And even if she was, there was no assurance that Hannah could read her thoughts. Hannah landed in the hall of the nursing home, which had a bad smell, a combination of rotten cabbage and sour milk. 2 nurses sat behind a counter. One of them was playing a video game on her phone. The other was dozing. Mrs. Merriweather was lying flat on her back, her short gray hair plastered against a yellowish-white pillow, her mouth open with bits of saliva dripping down her floppy jaw. She was snoring loudly, whistling through her hooked nose. As Hannah stood over Mrs. Merriweather shivered and pulled the thin, ragged blanket up to her wrinkled neck. She was dreaming of chocolate mousse cake topped with vanilla bean ice cream. She dipped her spoon into the dessert and eagerly brought it to her lips, exposing horse-like teeth. Then a bumblebee flew in the ice cream, and Mrs. Merriweather flung the spoon away, where it landed in a pile of manure. A man entered into the dream. He was skinny, wearing pajama bottoms, decorated with sailboats and a dirty white t-shirt. He was screaming at Mrs. Merriweather, and she was yelling back, branding a rolling pin in one hand and a frozen lamb chop in the other. Suddenly, Mrs. Merriweather was holding up the dining room table, which of course was absurd, because as round as she was, the dining room table was quite large, except this dining room table was strangely familiar. Something rolled on the floor in Mrs. Merriweather's dream, something small, something hard, something pink. Then Hannah remembered. She knew without any doubt whatsoever just where that pink diamond was. The only question now was, what was she going to do with that information?